But Jesus is all a Christian needs. And again, we come back to the main issue. Justin says, well, I'm not going to argue this. Oh, okay. I hope Justin will at least say, you accurately represented my book. You did read it, you tried to understand, and I've tried to understand. And I hope that I have communicated to you and to Justin my real concern this evening. Justin says, our organization has people who disagree about this. Okay. My question is, if the Scripture is the ultimate authority, and Jesus said it was, He judged men by what God had spoken to them in the Scriptures. Jesus has the highest view of Scripture. If that is our authority, and it must be for anyone who truly calls himself a Christian, can there be any question about what God's intention for man and woman is? This is a gospel issue. The past tense of that verb is still there. It's still inspired. That really, to me, is the issue this evening. Thank you for listening as I've attempted to explain that.
This portion of today's forum, we're going to have each of the speakers get 10 minutes to address their other colleagues on stage in order to ask and receive answers to the questions that they have so we can have a more direct dialogue. So we're going to invite Justin to start off by asking questions directed at Dr. White.
Cool. Can you hear me okay on this? Okay. So I like this part a lot better because I'm more of a dialogue person. I'm a conversation person.
Can you talk without moving your hands?
No.
Okay, all right, just check.
Maybe I need a label for that too. Yeah, I'm not a debater. This is the first thing like this I've done. You clearly have done very many. Thank you for being gracious to me. So I have a lot of questions for you, and I'm hoping that this will be a really kind of helpful conversation. And I guess one of my first questions is, you were talking there towards the end about lusting in your heart after a woman is a sin, which I certainly agree. Obviously that's scriptural. Would you, and since you've read some of my stuff, I know you know how I would answer this.
Yes.
Would you distinguish between being attracted to somebody and lusting after them?
Yes, I would. Do you want me to expand upon that a little bit? Because I would. Okay.
You don't have to.
Let me expand upon that just a little bit. I think there is a natural. I don't think there's something wrong when a man recognizes that a woman is beautiful. I think we know where the line is, where we go beyond that, where we start desiring that woman in a way that is inappropriate, in a way that violates what God has said to us. I would make a difference. I would make a differentiation. Would you mind if I use a story from your book?
Sure.
You mentioned, I believe it was it Michael W. Smith concert that you were at? And
I'm afraid there's like half of this.
I'm sorry, but I actually invited everybody to read your book. I mean, you will have to go back and tell everyone at GCN, the guy actually said to read my book. I can't believe he did that. But I won't use that specific situation, but you know what I'm talking about. I would say that in light of God's revelation, let me put it personally. We are all broken sexually because we fell in Adam. I have a beautiful wife. I wish she could be here, but she works full time, so I can have health insurance, so I can do stuff like this. No, that's absolutely the case. But she's gorgeous. Somewhere along the line, I signed an agreement to do all the aging for the group, so she now looks like my daughter instead of my wife, so it's terrible. But anyways, if I have a lustful desire for a woman other than my wife, I am demonstrating the brokenness of my sexuality even as a believer. Because God has given me everything I could possibly desire to have, and yet to want to go beyond that is, I believe, a part of my broken sexuality that will only be fully healed in the consummation of all things. So I would say that any desire for something that is beyond what God has given to us demonstrates a broken sexuality. And so I would say that homosexual desire even if it's not lust, is still a function of a broken sexuality, because we're all broken. So in other words, it's not, as you've put it, just me. It's a recognition that all of us have a broken sexuality in different ways. But I would say that to desire something that God has specifically said is not right. It only flows from the fact that I fell with Adam.
Here's I guess where this is a challenge for me, though, and maybe you can help me understand better how you see this. One of the reasons that it was important to me not to let this debate end up being just, let's debate about, Romans 1 and our gay relationships okay. One of the reasons I wanted to say, let's go ahead and just agree for the purpose of this discussion that they're not okay and then move forward from that, is that I know many people who identify themselves as gay Christians, who have committed themselves to lifelong celibacy, are fully in agreement that for them to ever act on their feelings or let them become lust or anything is sinful. And yet, it seems to me that folks in that situation are doing everything that they can possibly do as Christians to handle the situation that they're in a way that would be in alignment with all that you've said scripturally. And yet, it feels to me like when you and some other folks talk about what it's like for us and talk about our broken sexuality and stuff, it feels to me like there's a certain, even if you're doing everything you're supposed to do, there's something negative there. Not just negative in the sense of you're a victim of the fall and bad things have happened to you, but negative in the sense of you're not as good of a Christian or you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing.
Or that you're experiencing something that is very rare and can be indicative. And again, I have to go to Romans 1 for this. One of the reasons that Paul addresses that issue there is he's speaking of the nature of what the rebellion of man against God's created order looks like. And that's one of the examples he uses, because what he's saying is we know who God is, and we katakanton, we suppress that knowledge, and that results in a change in us. And so he utilizes an illustration where you have a created gender which comes from God, and yet that represents God's authority, and